Hey everybody, Kimberly here, and I am actually heading into my spring break right now. So I am looking at some really fun game nights, and the first thing I thought was, gotta have that quality time with my husband. So I have concocted the perfect, or my perfect, two-player game night. I've got 5 games here, and my game night lasts about 3 hours, which is not a lot of time, and I'm gonna just push all these games right into that 3 hours. So each game is going to last about 30 minutes with a little bit of setup and tear down. But these are going to be 5 games, not just that I want to play for my game night in the order I want to play them in, but these are all going to be games that I have not yet brought onto the channel. So these are going to be 5 new games to you that I'm going to talk about. This video was brought to you by Noble Knight Games. More about them at the end of the video. So, how do I want to open up my game night? Well, if it may surprise you, it's Lacuna. Okay, so Lacuna is essentially defined as the space between, and this is a lovely abstract tactile game to some degree. You're not shaking or doing anything with time or kind of doing dexterity things, but it is a very tactile game. You're going to lay out this beautiful cloth mat, and you're going to shake out all the flowers inside of the board. And there are 7 flower types and 7 flower meeples or little bits. So there are 49 of these all spread out, mixed up, but spaced out evenly. Then you've got player 1, player 2, they're going to play gold or they're going to play silver, and they have these pawns. There are 6 of them. And the start player is going to be able to select one of the flowers to kind of put in their scoring area to begin with. And then they're going to take their pawn and they're going to place it between 2 flowers that match, and there's nothing in between. It's just the pawn on an invisible dotted line between these 2 flowers. Now, it doesn't have to be equidistant. It can be any space on that invisible line, and they're going to put their pawn down on the board, and then they're going to take the 2 matching flowers, put them in their scoring area. Then it's going to pass, and each player has just 6 pawns to place in the game. That's it. And there's a second half to the game because, of course, you're going to say, well, there's not enough pawns to take 2 for each pawn. There's going to be some remaining. Yes, there are, but that's the coolest thing. So you're going to go put your pawn down, take the 2 matching flowers. Next player goes. It's going to alternate back and forth. And as you continue to place your pawn down on this board, you're not just trying to capture 2 matching flowers. You are trying to get those pawns in location for when everyone's played 6, you will then look at the board and say, which pawn, is it gold or is it silver, is this flower that's still on the board closer to? And then players are going to collect the remaining flowers just based on how far their pawns are away from these flowers. And of course, you're just comparing it simply from, do I have a closer pawn than you do, opponent? Then I'm going to be able to take that flower. Now, the whole goal here is to win 4 sets of flowers, but you don't have to win all the flowers because, again, there are 7 sets, but there are 7 in each set. So you have to earn 4 or more. So if you earn 4 or more of 4 of the types of flowers, by the end, once you have divvied up all the flowers in the game, you win the game. Lacuna is such a fascinating, abstract, visual, tactile game that just is a wonderful way to start out a game night for 2. It is specifically designed for 2 players, and it comes in this tub, this kind of cylinder that is just the coolest. You just get all of your pieces in there, and it is just lovely, beautiful, fast. It's got a little bit of that abstract though, because boy, my spatial awareness, not always the greatest. And I find that this is just a fun, quick game that I really do enjoy playing with my husband, who is quite good at those spatial games. So this is how I want to start my 2-player game night. So after we've cleared up Lacuna, and it's only been a mere 20-25 minutes into our game night, I want to jump into a little bit juicier of a game. And this is still going to be competitive, but it's something I haven't, again, had the chance to bring onto my channel. I think this is a clever game, it's a fun game, and it is a beautiful game. It is Caper Europe. So I'm going to take it out of its beautiful Mastermind Edition case so that we can see the front of the board. Okay, so this is Caper Europe, and in this you've got different cards from Paris or Barcelona or from Rome. And when you play the game, you are going to be shuffling in one of those special cities with the base cards. So there are 3 different ways you can play this game, meaning you've got a different experience with different locations and different folks and different gear and different, like thieves, I guess, is my folks. So this has that replayability in there with the 3 different cities inside of Europe. But the way that the Caper works, the way this works is you've got a long board in front of your players. So I'm sitting on one side, and then of course my husband's on the other side. And we are looking at 3 different locations. You're going to shuffle up the base deck with, let's say, Paris. We're going to play with Paris. And then you're going to deal out those locations into the center. They're going to be 3. And then players are going to have the Thieves deck, and they're going to have the Gear deck. And those are going to be shuffled and placed down on the board. And it is essentially 6 rounds of play. And you're going to alternate based on which side of the board you're on. The actual board tells you what round it is, who gets to start, and from what deck you draw your cards from. And the cool thing, and how many. And the cool thing about this is, let's say you have that very first round, it says you start with the Thief deck and there's 4 pips. And so you're going to have 4 cards that you draw, and then the arrow is pointing one direction or the other. Players are going to draw 4 cards from the Thieves deck. They're going to look at them, and each person is going to choose one, and then you're going to pass the deck to your opponent. And so you've got this drafting mechanism, and you're seeing what other players are going to be able to draft after you. So you're picking wisely, then you're getting the new deck, and you're like, oh wow, this might pair really well with what I had there as long as they don't take this. Or if I want to keep this card from them, I've got to make sure that I play it. And then that last card is not going to be played in that drafting phase. So you're always going to have that 1 card remaining over. But that is it. You're essentially picking these cards. And when you have a thief, you're going to put them down into a city or a location. So there are 3 locations, and you can have up to 3 folks in each of those locations. And then the next round, you're going to do the same thing, but with gear. And there are all these different kinds of gear that let you do really cool stuff. And you're going to be placing gear items down onto your thieves to essentially create a crew, because you are going into this location and you're trying to steal really cool stuff. And you are trying to be the most awesome at that particular location, because you're going to be wanting to move the dial closer to you. There is a spectrum, like a little, kind of like those what are they, like Catwoman eye, a mask, like an eye mask, and that's going to move closer to you. And if it's on your side at the end of the round, which is, or I guess the end of that whole turn, which is 6 of those card drawings, then you are essentially going to win that location. So you really want to make sure that you push the dial, you create a good crew. But if you're focusing on one location and you're really beefing it up, what about the other locations? Is your opponent taking advantage of you focusing in on one? Are you spreading out your crew with your thieves and your gear in different locations? It is entirely up to you. There is a really nice, fine balance of just a very few attack cards. They have these burn cards, but they're only 3. And then the other thing is that there's a limited amount of coins, and coins are going to be divvied up amongst the players. But if you have, there's just 10 coins and you don't have a balance of coins, you can take from your opponent. So there's a way that prevents players from hoarding. So there's a limited supply of coins, and it really encourages you to spend coins on gear and really expensive items. It's just a clever game. It's really smart, it's really fun, and it's gorgeous. It is a beautiful game. You really, really want to play. It's just gorgeous, and even this one has that cover. It has that kind of gold foil cover on it, but it is a dynamite 2-player game that has a more elevated push and pull mechanism that isn't always my favorite, but it really works here. All right, so now that we've got Caper, Europe all cleaned up, I am now grabbing the Duo version of one of my favorite games, Tokaido Duo. So I got this game just this past year, and moreover, I got it because I really do enjoy the kind of tranquil journey through Japan in the original, and I just think the collecting part of it is so fun. It's just not necessarily balanced well for two players, and that's where I find myself wanting to play Tokaido. So now I've got Tokaido Duo, it's out on the table, we are right there in the middle of game night. This game has a really interesting alternating die choice. So after you've got everything set up with the board in the center and all of your figures in the right place, you've got your personal player boards that keep track of your progress, you are going to take the 3 dice and you're going to roll it as the start player. Now, out of the 3 dice, you are simply going to pick 1 die to activate, and each of these dice are associated with one of the 3 figures that you have on the board. There are going to be folks that are in these center spaces, not on any location, and those are going to be called your artists, and they are going to move around in the center area. Now, there's also another grid that's on spaces in the central area, and those are going to be your merchants. And along the edge, running clockwise, you're going to have figures that are part of a pilgrimage, and those are your pilgrims. And so you're going to select the die that you want to use and then move a figure of your color that many spaces exactly, and you're going to then trigger that particular action. Then your opponent will take one of the remaining 2 dice, and then you get the 3rd die. So there is a little bit of figuring out what do you want to take advantage of first, what are you really looking for, and then what do you think your opponent might take and then leave you with. But then you also have to know that the very next turn, they're going to roll the dice, pick 1, and then you take 1, and then they take the 3rd one. And so the turns in this are kind of piggybacked essentially. It's tough because you're like, we're alternating 1, 2, 1, and then they go 2, 1, 2. So you're going back and forth, but in a turn, you're really getting 2 turns, and they're getting the 1 turn of the choice. So it's fascinating. Now what you're doing with your markers is you're trying to get a really cool multiplier with your leftmost board, which is going to the temple multiplied by that kind of bamboo area, which is essentially your gardens. And those are activated on pilgrimage, which is the figure that you move along the outside. So the way you move those markers up is really straightforward. And then those at the end of the game are going to be multipliers. And in this game, when you collect dollars or money, you are essentially going to trade out for 10. You're going to get one of those long gold monies, and you're going to put it underneath your board, and that's going to obviously be giving you victory points at the end of the game, but also is a game end trigger if someone gets that 6th one. There's also merchants and trading out goods in this game where you have to collect them first, and then you have to go to those towns to sell them for the set number of money, so that's where you're getting the money to then get those gold dollars. And then there's another feature here too where you're kind of looking at vistas and you are flipping over these randomly shuffled tokens on your board and you are banking them. So there are a lot of different tasks, there are a lot of things going on, and there's that nice amount of choice, but it also has that delightful feature of Tokaido that I just really, really enjoy. There are even these super cool bonus tokens that you can get and place into one of 3 spaces in your player area. And I think that really helps the game be maybe just a little bit juicier than even Tokaido, because I think in Duo you get to do more. There's more going on. It has like more, bite or chew to it than the original. And I think that with just 2 players, gameplay is so fast and it's perfectly balanced for 2 players. Okay, so one thing that I really do feel like moving into the second half of game night is looking more towards cooperative games and games where we can have a good time together, because sometimes competitive games, you kind of feel like you're just kind of at each other, right? You're just like pushing and pulling and trying to beat the other player. I love starting with a light game. I think Lacuna is a fantastic entry game, 20-minute abstract game to begin. But after we've got through all of those strategy games, after we've kind of, blew off some steam, we are ready to work together in one of my favorite duet versions of a game that I think is fantastic. It is Codenames Duet. So what I like about Codenames Duet is it really takes this 4 to 8 player game, which again, not going to happen on my normal game night. We're going to distill it down, and now just 2 of us. We are working together, one on one side, one on the other side, and we are doing the classic Codenames clue, which is giving your opponent one number and one word to get them to guess the cards that are in the center in a grid. And on each card is a name, is a word. It's not a name, but it's just a word. And you're looking at a grid that tells you which ones you need them to touch, to guess, which are the green ones. So it's super easy. I have 9 that I want my opponent to get, or my player, my fellow player. We're on the same team. And then I have my husband who wants me to guess 9 that he can see, but 3 of them are overlapping each other. So that means that there are 15 total clues that we are trying to get in a set number of time. We only have so many rounds to get this done. And in the beginning, it's a 9-9. You essentially are going to be, you're guessing the 9, but they're also 9 turns. I give a clue and a number, you give a clue and a number. Each time we do that, it's going to be 1 guess round. Now, there are some ways that your round or your game could end early. There are little black X's on your board, and if your player, if the person you're trying to get to guess your clues touches one of the cards with the assassin, with the black X, the game is over. But my assassins in my grid are not in the same space as the assassins on his side. So it is a real fun puzzle of trying to guess successfully, guess effectively, and to get it all done, all 15, avoiding the assassins within our time limit. And the way that Codenames Duet works also is that you've got this kind of challenge grid where you're hopping all over the world trying to uncover all these different mysteries and puzzles where you're playing the same game, but you have different parameters and different challenges and different lengths. Meaning you can get things wrong a certain number of times or not. I mean, it kind of restricts how many times you can guess wrong. Because if you just guess a non-green or a non-black for the assassin, it's kind of like a beige or neutral color. That's going to end your turn, your guessing turn, but it also spends that time. Every turn you take is always going to be a time, but it might end early if you touch one of those innocent bystanders. So it's just a lovely, lovely game. I think it's just the game that gets us most excited. Like, we get so emotional. It's like the perfect pick-me-up for game 4 of a 5-game night. And I think it's just like the best for working together, but also having a ton of stories to tell after you finish. And you might fail, but then again, if you have enough time, play it again right away, because this is the game that benefits from playing it again right away. Okay, so we have made it to the last game of my game night for 2 players, and this is just the most fun. It is a nail biter, and it is a nice compact card game that last year had 1 game come out of a trio. And I know you're probably like, what's going on? So this is new to my channel, but the IP isn't. The game that I'm talking about is Kinfire Delve Scorn's Stockade. So last year I talked about Kinfire Delve Vainglory's Grotto, and there will be a 3rd one that comes out with yet 2 more heroes and the kind of big bad that the game is fighting against. And what you're doing in this game is you and your player, this is really a 2-player game. There is a solo variant here, but I feel like this is a just classic 2-player game. You really need the balance of both characters coming to the table because they are going to play off of each other and really complement each other. So this is a tactical cooperative game where players have a unique set of cards that they will play to dive down this well, fighting obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, digging through the deck all the way to the very bottom, in which they reveal again, the big bad. And this is going to be a final standoff against this pure evil at the end, and characters have to manage their personal decks and their personal player hand well if they're going to last, because this is all about stamina and strength. And I think the cool thing about this whole series is that there is a feature that really helps with the cooperation and playing on other people's turns, and it's called boosting. So a player is going to essentially select one of the 4 cards around the well to attack. And they are going to play a card possibly, but they could also just roll the dice and hopefully get some strength towards their attack. But a lot of times players are going to play a card because it's going to have an attack value, it's going to have a special trigger ability. And then other players, like my fellow player right here across the table from me, Lewis, is going to maybe be able to play a card as a boost. And a boost is the ability at the bottom of his cards. So all of his cards are different and have different colors and different strengths and different boosts and different everything than my cards. But he can always boost mine if it matches the color of the attack. And there are 3 colors. There's green, red, and blue. And if it's a white, it's a wild. And you can boost white on anything, or if you have white, any color can boost that. And then after that, you're going to add up all those points, and then you're going to roll the dice. And there are going to be possibilities for you to gain more strength if the color of the dice match your attack color. And then you're going to resolve the card. Maybe you defeated the card because you reached its threshold. Then you get to have the cool stuff. You get to have the win stuff, which is so good for players in a variety of ways. Or, let's say you weren't able to defeat it in one fell swoop. You keep your progress on that particular challenge or task, and then the play is going to go to the next player. So then Lewis is going to go, and maybe he wants to finish him off, or maybe he wants to leave it for me on my turn. But if you don't succeed in something, there is probably going to be a drawback. There's going to be a negative. And players have a certain number of hit points. You get this D10 in the game box. And players collectively have 10 hit points. And if they ever lose all their hit points, the team is done and the game is lost and you don't win. You lose together. But you really want to make sure that you are just succeeding when you can, when you are being as efficient as you can with that dice roll. But there are some really fun triggers in here, and I think the coolest thing about this game is that every character has such a unique strength and ability, and they just have character. And so when you're looking at these characters, I really, really liked Scorn Stockade a lot. Like, I thought that dynamic between the 2 characters, between the Bard and between Naz, I just felt like they were so well paired, and I loved it. I mean, just loved it. So whether you win in this well dive or not, when you win the delve, it's just a cool, clever system. And I seriously can't wait for the 3rd iteration of the Kinfire Delves. And I will say, just a little sneak peek here at the end of this video, if you've made it this far, I will be getting my final thoughts after finishing the entire 21 mission scenario from Kinfire Chronicles Night's Fall. I finished it after playing a 3-player game, and I have a lot of thoughts on it, and I can't wait to share it with you. So just a little tease for another video coming up soon. But I have to say, just a wonderful way to end my game night, to keep that cooperative, like collective high working together. And hopefully we go out on a win at the end of my 2-player game night, which hopefully should last about 3 hours long. Boy, thanks for sticking to it and checking out some of these new games, some of these favorite games, some of these hot games that I have not had a chance to get on my channel yet, because they are fun. They are fun and they're well made, they're beautiful. Can't say enough good things about all 5 games I picked for my perfect 2-player game night. Alright everybody, I'll see you later.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more, going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at. complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Night Games.